Get a long letter sent back, a postcard time to heart. Oh, Mexico. Oh, Mexico. Oh, Mexico. Never really been, but I tasted the chocolate from Mexico. Oh, Mexico. Eyes like fire in the night, bridges burning with their light. Now I gotta spend my whole life through, and honey, yes, I gotta spend them all with you. How, look what you've done to me. Never thought I'd fall in love so easily. Oh, cacao, you wouldn't lie to me, needing me to feel this way. I looked at the moon and I felt blue, but then I looked again and I saw you. Cacao, look what you've done to me. Never thought I'd fall in love so easily. Cacao, you wouldn't lie to me, leading me to feel this way. Leading me to feel, leading me to feel this way. That was Bar Skags with Cacao. Look what you've done to me.
I'm using my reaction button. You got another one in you? Yeah?
Yeah. Cigarettes and chocolate milk. These are just a couple of my cravings. Seems it like I'd like a little bit thicker, a little bit more harmful for me. If I should buy jelly beans, have to eat them all in just one sitting. Everything seems I like a little bit sweeter, a little bit darker, a little bit harmful for me. Cigarettes and chocolate milk, these are just a couple of my cravings. Everything it seems I like a little bit stronger, a little bit thicker, a little bit hard for me. Cigarettes and chocolate. That was Rufus Wainwright with Cigarettes and Chocolate Milk. Does anyone know Rufus
really
Wainwright?
Sing Cigarettes and Chocolate? Or is that your own version?
That's a good question. It really is called Cigarettes and Chocolate Milk. Does anyone know that song? Bryan, Stephanie, Dahlia? Good. They've got a thumbs up, Dahlia. Rufus Wainwright is an incredible singer-songwriter. He's from a place called Canada, which is one of the countries that borders this great land of ours.
Yes, it does. We have it looks like we have most everyone here. Do you want to do one more, or do you want to? Should we?
No, let's hand it over to you. Oh my gosh, look at who's here! Let's just take a moment to recognize this amazing audience.
Yes. There's
you know, when you put it on the grid mode, it looks like Hollywood Squares.
It does. Yes, it does. And thank you all for coming. It looks like we've got a good group here. And thanks to Bradford Akerman for bringing us in, a little musical interlude. You can catch Bradford. He's actually going to perform at 6 p.m. on Instagram Live, as he does most days. And you find him at Indeno, INDENO, or maybe he can also type it into the chat. Something's up with mine. So he's, I'm doing that now. So you can catch him most days at 6, and if we get through chocolate tasting, maybe we'll have a little bit of time to catch him before he runs. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And I am going to get some introductory stuff out of the way before we taste all of these awesome chocolates. I'm really excited to be here with Bryan and Dahlia of Fruition, and there's a lot of excitement. I've known these guys for a long time, many years, and we've been partners together for 6 or 7 years, something like that. And it's been really great to get to know them and have fun with them and work on supporting their chocolate. So anyways, I'd like to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Bar Cacao Happy Hour Meet Your Maker series with Fruition Chocolate. And this is, I believe that a lot of you may be coming in from different directions, which I noted last week. This is the second Meet Your Maker Happy Hour. And I wanted to kind of say that this is really part of launching Bar Cacao's Makers Marketplace and Retailers Marketplace. And if you go to barcacao.com, you'll see that there's a marketplace there that allows you, hopefully is how you got your tasting flight for today. There's some discounts there, and there's lots of craft chocolate makers that I've specifically chosen very carefully for good reason. And today we're going to focus on what those good reasons are with Fruition. I mean, it's hard to, yeah, there's just a lot of good reasons. I do also want to remind you that there's a code Bar Cacao that gets you 10% off on a half a dozen chocolate makers. So if you go to the website, you can do that. And also a little quick programming note that tomorrow I'm going to be on Instagram Live at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 East Coast time as part of the Stay Home with Chocolate Festival. And I think you guys are, Bryan and Dahlia are doing that too. So it's a Stay Home with Chocolate festival. It's on Instagram, which you can find if you just search for Stay Home with Chocolate. And they're doing some stuff for Father's Day. So tomorrow I'm going to go through lots of Father's Day selections based on the marketplace. In fact, a lot of the selections are going to be based on what we're tasting today. I'm definitely going to be talking about what we're tasting today. And what we tasted last week with Dick Taylor and some other fun stuff there. Next Thursday is the Ritual Happy Hour. We're going to be tasting the single origin set of theirs. Comes in a very pretty box, and there is still enough time to order if you get on it, like literally today, for it to show up for next week. And on the 19th, Bryan and Dahlia, or well, one or the both of you are going to give a factory tour. So if this all sounds kind of cool and get your juices going, they're going to do a factory tour on June 19th, which is not tomorrow, but it's Friday, the following Friday, at 4:30. But I don't know whose time that is. Oh, here we go. Oh yeah. Dahlia's rocking it out. She's got it up on the chat. You guys all noticing the chat too, by the way? There's you should have a chat option where you can chat with everyone or with somebody else in the group. I believe that some of you guys know each other, which is really cool. And I actually recognize a few names, which is really nice too. I also set up a poll, which I thought would be fun. Just kind of checking in with the crowd and taking your pulse and having a little bit of fun with the tools that we have in Zoom. All right, so yes, welcome. Those are the technical details. I think we got it. We hope that, because we all hope to see you again for sure. You know, a lot of the joy of craft chocolate is in community. So gathering here today is really one of my favorite things to do. And doing it with Fruition is even better. And I picked this tasting kit. I picked all the bars in this tasting selection. So I'm actually super excited because, you know, it's basically playing exactly my game. So hopefully you guys all got 6 bars. It's gonna be a little more today. We're definitely very happy to have questions be part of this. It's an important part of this, but we do want to kind of keep the flow going with chocolate tasting in the middle. And then if you have questions very specific to the chocolate, absolutely. You'll notice also there's a reaction button that allows you to raise your hand or type in a question on the group chat, and we'll keep an eye on that so that we can take some questions and still keep the flow of the tasting going for everybody. And then if there's some more general questions, we're likely to have time at the end. But now for the fun part. Bryan and Dahlia, you wanna unmute yourselves and join in the conversation? Do you guys all have your chocolates ready? This is just a beautiful collection of chocolates. Yes.
I've got them.
I suspect you might have a little bit of chocolate around.
I'm at the shop. I have literal tons of chocolate on hand.
Literal tons. You got me, even me beat with my fridges, my chocolate fridges. So Bryan, well, this is tons of fun. So you're at the shop, although
I am at the shop.
Background?
Yeah, it's one of our trade show background banners. I just set it up so it makes me look a little more official.
You look very official. Very, very official. Love it. Now, more important question though, do you have a beverage?
I made some horchata today. I don't know how well that pairs, but it's I actually followed the recipe just completely on a whim. I followed the recipe in Dandelion's book for their nibby horchata.
That is good.
Just because I was kind of craving it, so I made a batch of it, and it's really delicious.
Yeah,
That's the only beverage.
I love it at Dandelion, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
I'm kind of lame. I'm going a little lame right now. Well, I just can't. I'm saving my beverage for later. I have chamomile tea.
Well,
otherwise, I don't think I can handle all the moving parts.
I have Australian Chardonnay from a friend who is a taster for wine enthusiasts who texted me this afternoon saying there's wine on my porch, come and get it.
What? She just left you wine?
Yeah.
That's a nice, a good friend to have.
A nice friend to have, yeah. Yeah, so cool. Should we say something about Fruition, or you want to whet their appetite with some chocolate?
Yeah, no, I guess I'll say, I've known you guys for a long time, but certainly not as long as you've been in business. And a little quick take on, how we got acquainted. I had been aware of you since you guys started making chocolate around 2011, I believe it was. Yeah. But before, Bryan actually is one of the few people in craft chocolate who has a culinary background. Most people just kind of like fell in love with the bean and, like, oh, I can just do, everybody loves my chocolate. Let's do this, But Bryan, I believe he's been a chef since he was like 16 and kind of a hotshot chef, rose through the ranks really quickly and started making confections. And then if you ask me, did the masochistic move because confectionery is its own lifelong skill set as far as I can tell from where I'm sitting. And chocolate making is its own lifelong skill set. If you ask me, I would never do it ever. Some of you who were at the Dick Taylor one may remember from last week. There's lots of good reasons for me to never make chocolate, but part of it is that I don't think I would like it, no matter how hard I tried. So I leave it to the professionals. So anyways, Bryan then decided to start making the chocolate for his confections around 2011. At that point, I was really focused on being, because this scene was so new, I was very much fixated on this purist focus. So I would partner, I had just a couple of partners, and it was Dick Taylor, like it was 2 ingredient chocolate makers, cacao and sugar, that kind of purist angle, because I just didn't feel like, I thought it'd be really confusing to have somebody who made confections that I partnered with. How do I explain what craft chocolate is if it's not, like it just kind of felt a little confusing. But our worlds kind of started merging as Bryan started getting more into chocolate making, and we started just kind of seeing each other at different shows. And in around 2013, the timing was right, and you were working on your rebrand, and your chocolate line was developing, and I mean, it's just been game on ever since. So that's my angle of Fruition, but yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much accurate. I actually, the first batch of chocolate that I ever made was in 2008. So it was way before we started the business. It was when I was still in culinary school studying with Peter Grueling. And it, like the idea for me was, I always knew like I wanted to be a confectioner. I wanted to be a chocolatier. But I was, and I was like getting better at it and learning the craft, and knew I kind of wanted to have a business in chocolate, but trying to figure out what would make that business unique. And what that ultimately became was that we would be a chocolatier who also happens to make all of our own chocolate, which is at the time was like a little bit of, an ambitious goal, to say the least. And then when we got started in 2011 and actually started and founded the business, we became like relatively well known early on for our chocolate bars. So that wound up being a much bigger portion of the business than the confectionery part. Although the confectionery, the chocolatiering is like really what I love doing. I mean, I love making chocolate, of course, but yeah, so it's been evolving since 2008, 2009, when we first like sowed the first seeds of what this business would become.
When did Fruition start?
So we incorporated the business. I mean, if that's how you want to like define like the beginning, in April of 2011. But we had been making chocolate well before then. And we opened, I mean, we celebrate every year in the fall around November, which is really just like, we always have a big anniversary party at our shop. I mean, hopefully this year we'll be able to like actually welcome people back into our shop.
Well, if it's virtual, I'll be able to come.
Yeah. Yeah, so we celebrate in the fall because that's when we open the doors to our retail store here in Shokan.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Nice. So I want to kind of bring up the first bar, which I mean, maybe raising. I usually like to start with. I go in the sweeter direction for when I taste. For me, I find it just too. I think that the sugar hangs on your palate, and I mean, the simple math of if you tasted a white chocolate and then 100% chocolate, the 100% chocolate would just taste abrasive and bitter. So, you know, flipping it around, that's the angle that I go in. So I chose 100% bar for this. And I know it might not be like everybody's cup of tea, but actually, I don't know. I think I am very hopeful. I really want to know people's opinions of this bar because I think it's a beautiful bar. Technically, it's not chocolate because it doesn't have a nutritive sweetener, by the way, but we're calling it, you know, it's 100% bar. You can just call it 100% bar. And I definitely want Bryan to speak to it, but this is a really cool 100% bar for a couple of reasons. One, there's no added cocoa butter. Most bars, if you look at it, you'll see beans and cocoa butter. And the cocoa butter, well, it's like butter. I mean, it's the cocoa beans fat, right? It's just adding fat. And it tends to kind of smooth over and coat over flavors. So if you get like a Palu bar, 100% bar, theirs is pretty popular. It's like 20% cocoa butter. At least that's what Chloe kind of indicates. I don't know their exact formulation, but it's this huge chunk of cocoa butter, so it just kind of like masks everything. And nowhere for these beans to hide. So this is really interesting. There's just one ingredient, but in that one ingredient, there's actually 2 beans, which I think is really cool. And I definitely want Bryan to talk about the process. So in terms of, in terms of tasting, I do want to say really quickly that you want to engage your senses. I'm not sure what level everybody is at, but you know, you do want to look at it. You can even listen to it when you snap it. You want to get the aromatics with your nose, and then, as I like to say, suck on it. Give it time to melt in your mouth, because that's a lot of the pleasure of chocolate, is it turns from solid to liquid, right? And also you get a better sense of the textures and the flavors should progress, and you should get a clear sense of the texture as well. But 100% bar, one of my analogies is it's like an unsweetened espresso. So be forewarned, if you think you got a big nibble and you've never had 100% before, like sometimes I'll even tell people to lick it first, you know, just to know what they're getting into. But I do want to, Bryan, I've been gabbing about one of my favorite 100% bars, and would definitely love to get into tasting it. I love that you formulated it with 2 beans. You want to talk about that? I know a little bit about the process. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, just a tiny bit of background. I don't personally eat a ton of chocolate. I love chocolate, but and it may sound strange as somebody who makes chocolate and candy for a living. I don't love sweets. So the 100% bar is really the only one that I actually eat with any regularity. And it took us a long time to actually introduce a 100% bar. When we started out, we had like very rudimentary equipment, simple stone melangeurs, and the 100% that we were making were like very crude because we weren't able to really conch it very well. 100% is like a really, I mean, to start out, it's like it's a very kind of love it or hate it type of chocolate. It's not for everybody. I mean, most of the customer complaints that we get are, in general, are about the 100%. People just don't understand what they're buying, so it's kind of a difficult one to start out with. It wasn't until we got some of our like more advanced equipment and we were able to like really control the refining and conching that I was actually happy with the result of our 100%. And you asked about the two different beans. It is a blend of beans. It's about a 50-50 mix. Oco Caribe, Dominican Republic cacao, and then Pangoa, Peru. And we roast them both a little bit differently, and we stage the processing as it goes into our universal refiner conches, so that we're able to sort of control like some of the flavors that come out of the Pangoa beans that go into the conch first, and then typically the following day, or depending on when we start the batch, the Dominican beans will go in after that. So it's kind of like, you know, just like with cooking, we're kind of attempting to layer flavors in that chocolate. And it generally, beyond that, it conches at a relatively high temperature for quite a while. So even though it is 100%, there's no sugar, there's no added butter, there's no vanilla, there's nothing there to mask any of the flavors or to tone it down. For a 100%, I think it's quite palatable.
I think it's, yeah. Are we all kind of looking at the tools? Like, has anybody gotten into it yet? I've been nibbling. Do we have any, where are thumbs going on this one? This is actually a fun way to do it. Like, we can all kind of see a little bit. For me, it's here. You also have if you just know your thumbs up, there's a little,
I like this reaction.
But yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's really easy. That's like one of my fastest gauges. Like, where are we with this? Yeah. Oh, so what we have to do, yeah, I know it was a bold move to start us off with 100%. But don't we have a recipe or something or some ideas for those who are like, no, this is not my jam to nibble on?
Yeah, so if you have the rest of that bar and you're not really into it, which is totally fine, believe me, I can take the feedback. I don't really mind it.
It's like espresso though. Not everybody, does totally. Espresso. It's not, yeah.
Yeah, heat up a saucepan of milk or whatever milk alternative. Whisk the 100% in. Add sugar to your heart's content, and make some hot chocolate out of it.
Mm-hmm. Also, shaving it on sweet desserts will definitely have a really cool effect, like on ice cream or something like that. I mean, we were talking about your brownie recipes, but it doesn't really use 100% bar. But I mean, it's an expensive way to go. But if you replaced regular baking chocolate with this, that whatever you're making is going to be extra nice.
It's an expensive way to go, but it makes a huge difference.
Over sweet corn. I'm sorry, I'm outing you, Elle. Elle put into the chat that this would be good with espresso. Yes, I think so too. Or over sweet corn. I actually totally think that would work. I like Asian desserts that are, use corn and beans and stuff. I totally agree. And by the way, if you want to, Elle, did you have anything else to add to that now that no. I think, yeah, this is a fun one. You can totally play with it. Who's going to be nibbling on it? Some of you. No. Okay. All right. Well, this is all right. Part of why I did this too is to show, because this is really range that most chocolate makers don't have as well. So, we're going from one ingredient all the way to a bourbon barrel aged dark milk chocolate. So this is going to be really fun, and we'll definitely get you going good. What do we think? Are we ready to add a little sugar?
I can add one quick note on the 100%. When I first tasted it, I thought what? Like I also, like the very first time I tasted 100%, I thought that there was something wrong with it. I was like, what is this? And then years later, after having a little bit here, a little bit there, I've acquired a taste for it. And now I like seek out the fruit forward flavor profile and kind of that balance between the chocolatey and like the berry notes. And when people ask me like about a 100%, I usually kind of compare it to black coffee, where you're just drinking it straight to experience like the flavor of those beans. And I also saw, I don't know if it was answered, but I saw a question come through about conching, which the way I kind of quickly explain it to people is heat and airflow to suck out like any of the volatile or unwanted flavor profiles. So with our 100%, we conch it a long time, which like mellows it out a little bit more than some people's 100%.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have had experience with 100%. Most people's experience with 100% is like the kid as a kid going into the kitchen and thinking you found the chocolate stash and, you know, like eating the unsweetened baking chocolate. I just think it's really beautiful, the flavors that come through, especially, you know, knowing that usually it takes some sugar to have the flavors be so balanced. And, you know, usually in addition to the cocoa butter I mentioned, usually just makers roast the crap out of their cacao. So it just tastes like chocolate and fat basically. So yeah, you can tell I got some love for this bar, but time to move on to some sugar. Now we're up to 2 ingredients. We got cacao and sugar, and we're gonna do the 85% bar next. Where you keep rolling in the sweeter direction. And this is one of your newer bars. This has only been out for a year, I don't know.
I think about 2 now.
2 now.
Yeah, 2 Northwests ago, like 1.5.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Like that, yeah. And I guess, you know, I mean, for me, we haven't had like specific conversations about this. For me, I'm always curious. So this, there's been some, in more recent years, Colombian origins have come onto the craft chocolate scene, which has been, I think, really awesome. Just some really beautiful cacao there. Lots of stories too. But most people are kind of doing a very different angle on this. So perhaps that was the reason you said, you know what, nah, I want to do an 85%. Why did you decide to do a high percentage bar with this one?
Dahlia, do you want to take that question?
Sure.
We may have different answers.
Got to back away from the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. We have a 3-year-old daughter, so we're juggling tonight. The 85%, well, we developed our product line like Bryan had as light as a toasted white bar and then all the way up to 100%. And we had our darks were in the 70s range with like of our official darks, 76% being the highest at the time, which for those of you who have followed our brand was our Marignon. 76 was the highest, and then it jumped to 100 and there was this big gap in the middle. And so we wanted to do 85, but also these particular beans from Tamanco, Colombia are really kind of, I mean, I find like brownie-like and like kind of do have that classic chocolate profile, like a touch of maybe blackberry or some sort of brightness behind it, but like it doesn't need that much chocolate to taste like chocolate in this case. And so it's a very like palatable 85% for somebody who doesn't want to consume a lot of chocolate but wants to enjoy the flavor of chocolate.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I can see, yeah, like a first round of bars. I'm looking at the date. Batch number 1 right here. The texture is gorgeous too. That's another feat when you have just no, you know, you're not using cocoa butter or any emulsifiers or anything like that. The texture is really gorgeous. How are we with this one? I picked them all, so this is where my thumb goes. Yeah. Do we have any comments or questions about this one? No? Yes, just thumbs up.
I'll add in one quick origin note. So Tumaco, I have a really close friend whose husband was down in Tumaco working on like initiatives to counter narco trafficking, and that's how we first heard about the region. And I was like, oh, you're in Tumaco? You know, it was someone who's not involved in the chocolate world. And I was like, oh, you know Tumaco, like there's cacao down there, like scope it out for me. And then from there, I got connected into, you know, getting the beans. I got them through Uncommon, but I had heard about the cacao in the region and what was going on down there beforehand. So we're excited to support that origin because it's helping farmers in that area gain a livelihood through cacao instead of coca production, which goes toward cocaine. So this is a better outcome for the farmers because we pay a premium price. They're able to find a living outside of the drug world, although I understand it's still quite dangerous down in that area. And now they're dealing with coronavirus on top of it. So we've been able to help a little bit with some, you know, donating toward masks and protective equipment for that area. But it's, yeah, it's a tricky time worldwide, and it's nice to kind of stay in touch with our producers.
Yeah, definitely. Louisa Martin's asking, are beans hard to get from Colombia? I would say, I mean, with Uncommon Cacao now sourcing and cacao hunters and all the work they're doing, I imagine, I mean, I would have the same question, but I would imagine I know that it's gotten a whole lot easier with kind of those two maneuvers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Uncommon has a pretty secure supply, but I don't know, you know, with all that's going on in the world, how some of the exports might be delayed, or, you know, there might be certain issues with beans, but from my understanding, they have a container on its way pretty soon. And we haven't personally run into any issues, but maybe people who are using larger quantities might have more delays. I'd say across the board with coronavirus, like there are a handful of suppliers that are just kind of like everything's kind of on slow mode where things are taking longer than usual. But as far as safety goes, yeah, I think that they need to take, you know, they're probably, you know, getting the beans from place to place with armed guards and all of that to kind of safely get from A to B. But I think that there's some acceptance of what's going on down there. So yeah, I'm not an expert on it, but I definitely try to understand as best as I can what's going on at origin, so that we can, you know, have that connection.
Yeah, and I'll add that, I mean, like, most of the origins that you see with craft chocolate makers, like the most established one is Madagascar, you know, and beyond that, you know, and that's been going for, I don't know, a really long time, longer than the craft chocolate scene. So what I understand, a long time. But most of these origins have really come about in the past decade, really. So this is just a totally delicate new supply chain that's really fragile. So part of a lot of this work is really in trying to support and maintaining it. And you guys are all doing that when you consume the chocolate. So that's actually the best part of the supply chain to be on, if you ask me. But yeah, it's all really new and, you know, and fragile. So we want to support the good stuff. Oh, you got some questions here, Brian. I don't know if you're seeing them in the group chat.
Yeah, I can see them. They're both two really good ones. How do we decide which bean is better for what percentage? It's a lot of experimentation. So for every new bar that we actually put out and start selling, there are probably a dozen or more test batches, experiments with different roasts, different percentages, different amounts of added cocoa butter, vanilla, things like that. So, and we're, you know, even though I'm the chocolate maker and, you know, the you know, kind of like the head, like person, the creative director here, we have a really amazing but very small team of chocolate makers and chocolatiers that I really put a lot of trust in at Fruition. So we all taste things together and we decide the direction that the final bar is going to go. It's not one of those situations where, like, I mean, of course, like, the final decision, I guess, is really mine, but we all work together towards the common goal of making really good chocolate. So like some types of cacao work well at much higher percentages, some work well at lower, sweeter, some benefit from having a little bit of added cocoa butter, some work really well as milk, some as darks. So when we get a sample of beans that we get excited about, I mean, we taste them in every form. So from raw, straight out of the bag, to we'll start with sort of our sort of baseline mid-range roast and taste them, and then, you know, we'll talk about it and decide maybe it needs to be roasted a little bit darker, or maybe if it's lighter it could be a higher percentage. Maybe if the roast is a little bit darker, it could be it would work well as a milk chocolate. So it's just a lot of experimentation, but ultimately, like, we try to make chocolate that we enjoy eating as a team. We're not necessarily thinking like what's going to, I mean, we are at the end of the day, we are running a business. So like we are kind of thinking about like what will sell well. But if the goal was to be a chocolate shop that just makes a lot of money, we'd just be like coating Oreos in milk chocolate and, you know, we'd sell millions of them. We're trying to do something that's really special, but that's also approachable by, you know, people in the fine chocolate world, but also the average consumer who's maybe never had craft chocolate. So it's a long-winded way of saying we just do a lot of experiments and try to come up with something that's delicious.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys got serious range. I mean, that's one of the awesome things about working with you guys. I mean, obviously we're going through we're at the purist angle right now, but we're gonna see that, you know, I mean, you just have so much fun stuff. Even your confections the other day, like, I can't really do dairy, but I had, you guys sent me new samples, so I have to rotate out my old samples. And there was, in your milk chocolate coated pecans. They're so good. I mean, like, if anything sounds good, if you guys go back to the website and start shopping and like, oh, that sounds good. Well, it is. It's going to be amazing. Like, is all I got to say. Everything is good. And speaking of everything being good, I am super pumped for the Wild Bolivia 74%, which is up next in the cool, fun packaging here. And actually I was going through this packaging, has had some iterations. This is the limited release box, and I found like old, I don't know how we really got these, but you can't see that. There you go. Bryan's been experimenting with different colors. And do you have one of
the oh wow, I can't believe you have that.
Yeah, I know, right? I really like this one. I was like, oh, I really like this pattern.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool now. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have one of the invisible but glow in the dark ones that I screen printed myself?
Yes. Voila. This one?
Yep, that's the one. Nice.
Check that out, you guys. How cool is that? And then actually, well, I remember I was like, you got to give it to me. I need that. I'm obsessed with it. And then I came to the shop and you're like, it was under here. Like, I don't know where it is. I don't know where it went. So I have the picture, of course. Yes, I definitely have the picture ready and waiting.
I don't even know if I have one of those.
Well, I'll share the photo with you. Okay, anyways, in this awesome, cool wrapping is the Wild Bolivia. I love these beans in general. Although it's my understanding some of them are coming from slightly different sources, but I just find the wild Bolivia beans in general to just, I've heard they're a real pain in the neck to work with, but they always just produce this, I don't know, this gorgeous chocolate. It doesn't, I like to say it plays the mid-range, meaning it doesn't go like super dark and earthy, you know, like super roasty, but it also doesn't go super tart. And for me, this one, I'm always kind of like in my head about like what fruit I think I taste. Because sometimes it tastes like a mild tropical fruit or like something custardy, or I love this bar. This is like, this bar is right up my alley, like 200%. So I'm definitely here. How are we? We got applause on this one. Thumbs up, down, in between. Oh, we got 2 thumbs up. Okay. Kasha, your son, I assume. Finally, yes, we got a winner there. Good.
He picked them all, but this is his favorite so far.
Good. I think he's gonna like the next one too.
Yeah.
Are the beans really a pain for you to work with, Bryan?
Yeah, so the beans are, I don't know, about 1/3 the size of an average cocoa bean. So they're very, very small. So you can't even start with like sort of our baseline like general roast profile. If you did, like they would wind up being burned. So we had to, when we started working with them, we had to like really relearn how to roast cacao. Like, so it's a very, very different process. And then winnowing them also is a pain because of their size and the ratio of shell and fines to actual cocoa nib. We wind up losing so much of the bean to waste because they're so small. And then even after winnowing, we're still going through by hand and picking out little bits of shell or little bits of shell that have stuck to nib. So it's a pain. But I mean, that's my favorite dark chocolate bar that has sugar in it. So I think it's worth the extra work. It also, for whatever reason, and we haven't figured it out because we have other 74% 2-ingredient dark chocolate bars, it is such a pain to temper and mold. It just does not cooperate. I mean, you'd think with you know, fancy semi-automated equipment in some cases that we'd be able to like easily just push a button and temper chocolate. This chocolate, and I shouldn't be saying this because like I'm like very science-minded and I understand like the processes of like tempering and molding and how things should react, and we have like a very controlled environment here. So the temperature is always the same, the humidity is always the same. But this chocolate gives us more trouble than any other chocolate to temper and mold.
Oh, I thought it was just, I thought once you got the, you know, roasted and husks removed that it might be easier going.
No,
so is that why it's limited release? Because you're like, listen, I need to let me always be able to dump this one. This is not part of my permanent.
It's a pain in the butt, start to finish, every time, every batch, no matter what. So yeah, I mean, it's a limited release, but it's a limited release that we've had for several years now. And we're starting to experiment with other wild harvested Bolivian cacao. So it may change slightly, or it may like be a different iteration of a wild Bolivia. But yeah, it's a challenging chocolate to work with all around. But it's worth it. I mean, I think I love that. I love that bar.
You're seeing the enthusiasm here, I think. somebody was asking about like wild harvest, and Dahlia did indicate they're wild harvested instead of cultivated. But I also wanted to note, and she's got a little bit of a note here, I also wanted to note that it's extremely rare to be harvesting wild cacao that's just kind of not being cultivated. Cacao is known for being cultivated. So that's part of why it gets this wild Bolivia name. They call them, what do they call them? Big cocoa hunters who go around in their canoes, and they canoe through and harvest the pods. And the pods are smaller and the beans are smaller and a pain in the neck to work with, and they make this delicious chocolate. So you can see it's kind of like a labor of love all the way from, you know, like it's not even being traditionally cultivated, you know. So I think there's a lot of fun, and I hope it just is like a limited edition bar that goes on forever. So this next one, the Hispaniola bar, yep. This one to me is in some ways a signature bar of Fruition. And for me, why was that? Because it's a single origin chocolate. All the cacao comes from Dominican Republic. It's Oco Caribe, I believe. But if you look at the ingredients, it actually is unusual that it has added cocoa butter and vanilla. And also it's a little unusual. It's bucking the craft chocolate trend of being under 70%, by just a touch, but still under 70%. So for me, this seems like is a bit of a signature bar in that it shows Fruition's creativity. In you know, we've seen these 2 ingredient bars with just cacao and sugar, and even a 1 ingredient bar, and that kind of was the trend, especially for the first first half of that 2010 decade. In particular, everybody, you know, just cacao and sugar, super purist, maybe an inclusion on the back, but this is a crowd pleaser. If I don't know anybody and what they like, this is one of my go-to bars. Like, try this. And because it doesn't, for me, I'm typically a purist. I'm usually kind of in the vein of like, just don't mess with my chocolate. But for me, this is really engaging and satisfying and complex. And yet it also is the kind of chocolate that it kind of comes across like it's a classic chocolate too. It's very palatable and easy to get into. And you're going to be, Adam was talking about it last week, you know, like almost nobody uses vanilla in their craft chocolate. And here we have just an excellent use of it. So yeah. Would you say, what do you think of my assessment that this is like, this to me is like one of your signature bars?
Yeah, all of that is accurate. God forbid, like we have a dark chocolate that has added cocoa butter and a little bit of added vanilla. It was and kind of is still a little bit unheard of, but for so long, since the beginning of the craft chocolate movement, everybody was saying like, oh, you add vanilla to mask defects in the cacao. It's to cover up flavors. But the way I look at it is adding vanilla can enhance the flavors of some chocolates. It's like, it's kind of the same reason, like, would any chef ever say like, oh, don't cook with salt because that's that's taking away from like the purity of whatever I'm cooking. Like, that's just absurd. If you think of vanilla as being as being a flavor enhancer as opposed to something that's covering up a defect, that's why we add it. And also, the term, it's so backwards and so silly to me that, you know, the saying vanilla as being synonymous with being plain is just insane, because vanilla is one of the most complex flavors on earth. It's one of the most expensive spices on earth. And it really, when paired well with chocolate, it enhances, like it works in both directions. Like, it just becomes a better thing. And like the reason it's a 68%, so it's a relatively lower percentage dark chocolate. has a little bit of added vanilla, and a little bit of added cocoa butter, there's a reason for that. Like this is sort of our, I call it Jess calls it a signature chocolate, which I guess it is, but it's also like our workhorse chocolate. So we use this for almost all of our chocolate coated nuts and berries, our pan coated products, for a lot of our shell molded confections, because it's like a really approachable sort of mid-range dark chocolate. So for instance, like a flavored ganache that's going in a shell molded confection, if you use something like that 85% Columbia, that's going to overpower any additional flavor that's in that ganache. Whereas something like the 68% it's a little bit sweeter. It's not as intense. It's like a really well balanced, well-rounded chocolate. So it just works overall. We never thought it was going to be like one of our sort of star standout, like really well-received chocolates. We just started making it as sort of like a mid-range bar, thinking that we'd mostly be using it as a component in our confectionery work. But then it wound up winning awards, and it's been it's won the Chocolopolis little bracket, like Sweet 16 competition, like a couple years, and it's been a runner-up a couple years out of like 16 other like really amazing chocolates. So whereas like kind of the trend veered towards, you know, super high percentage 2-ingredient dark chocolate bars, like the, you know, the purity of the cacao. This is a chocolate that's like very approachable. So not everybody really wants like a super intense, super heavy dark chocolate. Like this is just, it's just a good, accessible dark chocolate.
I agree. And I mean, I love talking about it in context, just as you're saying, you know, all these points about like, you know, there's, and this is why craft chocolate also is so much fun and it's so engaging, because that basic formulation could be kind of a mass produced chocolate formulation, or probably not exactly the way you've designed it, but with those essential elements of cocoa butter and vanilla and slightly below 70% and all these kinds of things as ways of kind of masking. But this is not your game at all, and that's what I love showing off. You know, that this is it's more than a balancing act. I'm not coming up with the right words, but like, right. I mean, this is a specific creation, and it functions in all these ways. You know, like I love that it's, you know, what you use for your bourbon caramels, and I mean, it's just, yeah, the workhorse thing is kind of ironic. It's the most gorgeous workhorse I know. So. Yeah, I really love that bar. I think you see why I say like I could give it to anybody. You know, I really could feel very comfortable giving it to somebody, you know, whether they're a total chocolate snob or they're like, I don't know, I like, you know, Hershey's, or I don't really know, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, we could kind of, I mean, we also kind of refer to it as like a gateway chocolate. So for people who think they only really like super dark, high percentage chocolates, like, well, maybe this may sway you towards like some of the lighter, sweeter, maybe even to like some of the dark milks or the milk chocolates, or vice versa. If you think you only really like milk chocolates or are intimidated by higher percentage dark chocolates or single origins or whatever, this might be a good way to sort of like ease you into that world.
Sort of answer your question. At what percentage does chocolate go from dark to milk? It they're separate things. So a milk chocolate needs to, and actually this is a good segue actually, milk chocolate needs to have 12% milk to be milk chocolate, and chocolate needs to be 10% cacao to be chocolate. The dark threshold, there's not a technical dark chocolate term by the FDA, but it's the way that they indicate it's about 35%, it's 35% and above. So that's why you can have a dark milk chocolate. You can have a dark chocolate, you can have a milk chocolate, you can have a dark milk chocolate. So they can overlap. So that's that. And it segues a couple things. Oh, well, I found actually, this is the previous packaging. I don't want to say old, but previous packaging, which I thought was kind of fun. So you see the nice upgrade I was super pumped because, well, people just, I don't know. This gives people a really good idea of what's inside, that it's just sexy, gorgeous chocolate. And I love it. But up next is, this one is really...
Hang on, Jess, before you move on, I'll see your old packaging and raise you one of the absolute originals.
Yes, and I have one of those. I was digging through my wrappers and I couldn't find it. Yeah, that is the super duper original version 1, like up till 2013, 2011 to 2013.
Yep, yeah, this is Best Buy August 2014, and Best Buy. I mean, I found we've been doing a lot of cleaning and reorganizing of our shop, and what was once our retail area. And we have a little chocolate vault. So we've been saving iterations of our chocolate since day one. And that's one that I came across the other day as I was digging through stuff. Yeah, so that's one of the first batches we ever made.
All right, well, you beat me to that one. However.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So this, all right, the next one is also, this is part of why I picked it too. The next one is also a 68%. You're checking this, right? So the Hispaniola was a 68%. This is also a 68%, but it's a dark milk chocolate. And I'm only allowed to disclose what I was talking about, that it's not technically a milk chocolate, because there is not 12% milk in that. I'm not allowed to disclose any further the formulation. But there's, the way I like to describe this is that the milk is like a seasoning, that it's more like a flavor enhancer. And we have a lot of history with this bar, because when we were talking about working together back in 2013 or 14, we had a bunch of conversations about when we would kick things off. But what really got me, like, yeah, we have the classic line, and every now and then I really need to do something, to keep my creative juices flowing. So I do these limited releases, and I'm like, tell me more. Well, like what? You're like, yeah, like I have this Marignan bar. It's kind of working through it is a dark chocolate. Wasn't quite happy with it. Tweaked it with a little bit of milk, and I think it's pretty cool. And I was like, send it to me. He's like, yeah, but I don't even really have packaging. I'm like, even better. I want it. So at the time, this is the original package. This was your limited release packaging. Sorry, the camera kind of does the mirror thing. I don't know which way I'm going. But you can even see this first bar was handwritten. Batch number 1. There wasn't a date on it, though. I was a little bit like, dang it. No, not even a date on it, handwritten.
That's my handwriting.
Yeah, that's probably.
So yeah, so this was the original packaging, and Bryan, for a little bit, because he was like, I just sell it in my shop for now, and I was like, well, sell it to me now. And then, but then he decided to, so I had like this exclusive, although really I wasn't selling much. It was more for kicks than anything, and a lot of fun to start off. But so it was my exclusive. And then at the Northwest Chocolate Festival that year, you decided to submit it, and it won like one of the biggest awards. And then it went on to Good Food Awards and International Chocolate Awards, and actually International Chocolate Awards, I think it was 2016 was the year, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, basically it got the best milk chocolate in the world nod. Just that one. They give out hundreds of awards. There's all these rounds and processes, and at the end of it all, 2 bars rise to the top, a dark chocolate and a milk chocolate. So this was the one that rose to the top in 2016. So this is the original packaging, actually, and then this was version 2.0, and then now we have this sexy new look. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Let's taste it. What do you have to say? I've got plenty to say about it.
When we were approached by the Marignan guys, they had been selling like very small quantities. Like their production wasn't very high. They were selling it to some chocolate makers, A lot of it was going to kind of their own brand, the Fortunato #4 Marignon made by Felkelin. And they asked us about it. We got some samples. We started playing around with it. And at the time, nobody was making, it was this like very coveted chocolate. It was, you know, they had a great, you know, marketing team, you know, marketing it as like, you know, this once thought to be extinct cacao, and, you know, the rarest cacao in the world, and all these like superlatives surrounding it. And like, yeah, it is like a very interesting cacao. It's not as special as they, you know, let on that it was, but I think it's a very special cacao, and I love all of the people involved in its production. But at the time, because it was thought to be so incredibly special, everybody was like every chocolate maker that was doing something with this cacao was only doing higher percentage dark chocolates, 2 ingredient. So I thought, well, maybe break with that tradition and maybe see what happens if we add a little bit of milk to it. And these beans can be like pretty wild flavor-wise. So it turns out that the addition of a little bit of milk kind of tames the intensity of the cacao. And, you know, again, after, you know, half a dozen or a dozen experiments and iterations, we settled on this. And I mean, it's, you know, I think it's a great chocolate. Like it technically would be classified as a dark chocolate, but think of it more as a dark chocolate that has a little bit of milk to kind of tame some of the flavors and add like a little bit of creamy texture to it.
Yeah. Oh, and I was going to say, yeah, I mean, this really flipped a lot of people's lids, though. This is a bar I like to talk about, obviously. But anyone familiar with Megan Giller's Bean to Bar chocolate book? This is forever memorialized because she came to, I had an apartment in San Francisco with a chocolate closet it was a whole closet of chocolate. So filled with, you know, well, with chocolate, with the best stuff. And so she was just like, she just showed up and was like, oh, you know, I'm here to like learn about everybody in the craft chocolate scene. And I was like, come with me, come on, let's go. And basically I was like, all right, here's the deal. Here's the lay of the land. Here are the basic origins. Here are the top chocolate makers. And we tasted a lot of chocolate. And, you know, I really kind of wanted to like have that experience with her. She's going to turn around and make a book, which she did, and it's a really cool book. But she talks about the chocolate closet and how this chocolate right here really flipped it. You know, she opened a brand new package and handed me a square without any comment. The mild chocolate started melting on my tongue almost immediately. The fruity notes tempered by traces of walnut, all laced with a hint of milk. It was magnificent. It was also my first dark milk chocolate. So, you know, this is just a really, really fun, important bar to me, and I hope you see why. I mean, the complexity is also a little bit of backstory about the bean real quick, is that like when they started releasing it, the first year they released One Harvest to Ritual, and then Ritual did a really nice job of it. I mean, it was just really cool. But then the next year's Harvest had more astringency, was what I was understanding. It was a different, you know, so everyone was kind of like, oh, you know, the flavors just shifted, the ratios. So it was my understanding that with part of it too was like, you know, we gotta manage this.
Yeah, I had some of our friends who are also chocolate makers try to offload some of those off-year Marignon beans onto us because they knew that, you know, our bar was so well regarded, and they couldn't seem to get a satisfactory result out of it. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing about any cacao anywhere in the world. It's year by year, it's going to be different. Harvest to harvest, it's going to be different. And yeah, there are like noticeable changes in that cacao from year to year.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that too. Yeah. I think we're ready for some bourbon. Little hint of bourbon. It's not very boozy, by the way, for the little one, right? Like, I mean, I wouldn't even. Yeah, it's not very boozy. We go slightly sweeter, and this is what we call an infusion, where the bourbon has. I think actually, yeah, you do it with the barrel staves, so the like wooden.
Yeah. So
staves. I mean, that's what they're
yeah.
called.
Yeah. The wooden the slats, the staves that make up the barrel. They're, you know, we're definitely not the first company that's done a barrel aged chocolate. But so a lot of people have been, you know, a lot of craft foods are aging things in bourbon barrels. Like that's a very common thing now. It's like very on trend. So what we do that's a little bit different is instead of trying to fill little bourbon barrels with nibs, we just disassemble the barrel and we age the nibs in a big plastic bin with the barrel staves. So it's easier. It's more effective because there are nibs touching more surface area of the barrel, but it's not just a you know, quote, barrel aged. It's also aged. The nibs are aged with the bourbon itself. So over the course of several months, we'll slowly add several bottles of the actual bourbon to the nibs, like, so right now the next batch that we have coming up in a few weeks, those nibs have been aging with the staves and the bourbon since February, which is actually a little bit longer than normal. So the next batch is probably going to be a little bit different than some of the previous ones, but I think it's going to be better. But don't worry, like there's, you know, by the time it's all processed, there's little, if any, actual bourbon in it. So during the refining and conching phase, all of that bourbon is evaporated out, and you're left with just the flavor from the barrel staves and the bourbon.
Oh, we have this is a favorite of Kasha's crew. There's a poll, FYI, if you guys care to chime in. Yeah, that one's the delicious bar. And well, I mean, we have tasted these. I actually made a little bit of a slideshow that I thought we could. It's kind of yeah, it's not that many pictures. We want to see some pictures of kind of our history, some of the fun things. Partly also because actually you may have noticed that I'm wearing this chocolate summer camp t-shirt. And you may be like, what the heck is chocolate summer camp? That sounds like the best thing ever. Well, it is. It's really, really, really awesome. And Bryan is one of the people who helped organize it. Actually, did we do it last year?
We did it last year.
So 3 years in a row.
Yeah, sadly, what would it be? Like if this year was happening, it would probably be like next weekend. So it's very sad that we're not doing it. I can't take. I mean, so Fruition was one of the organizers, but on our end, it was the boss. It was Dahlia who did most of the organizing on our part, and then Greg from Dandelion Chocolate and. Jail from French Broad, and then some of the earlier years, Sam from Videri did some of the organizing. But because it was in our area, we were sort of like the home base for everybody. So we had a little brunch here at our shop and welcomed chocolate makers from all over the place, and then went to summer camp.
Am I sharing my screen?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. This is I don't know how disastrous this is looking. Are there pop-ups all over the place? Or are you seeing the clear view? Looks good. Yeah, so this is actually the gathering. A lot of people get together around in June/July for Fancy Food Show and all these events. There's Fine Chocolate Industry Association. So this kind of springboarded off of that. And everybody rolled on up to Bryan's place for this gathering. Actually, there you go. There's everybody. Like, that's just, yeah. And so basically we're all here having a great time. I don't know why I weeded out all the pictures of all the goodies and stuff we had. It was so amazing. Although our Celia down here, she's got a plate full of goodies. Like, there's like donuts and lollipops and like all these just crazy, kooky, awesome. If you're ever in upstate New York, you got to go check this stuff out. Some of this stuff's online too. But then we just headed out to this camp. We just had summer camp for a couple of days. We just sat around eating chocolate all day. And yeah, there's two of the organizers with our Celia. And Zoe, yay, Zoe made it to the party. And here's us evaluating cacao. It actually was a really kind of fun and informative time. And this is a really crappy picture, but I needed to put it in because this is our bonfire where we made s'mores. And these were not everyday s'mores, obviously, with this crew, with chocolate makers everywhere. And also with Bryan graham crackers. So they were the best s'mores ever. Dandelion made the marshmallows. Bryan made the graham crackers. They were really graham crackers. And everybody had the chocolate. So it was pretty amazing. Oh, and I guess I'll do the slideshow at this point. I mean, this is back in 2014 at Dandelion Brunch. This is when we were chit-chatting about working together. I tried to find you guys. There's so many people in this picture that we all know, but they do that basically every year. That was back when that was back when they just had the cafe, and now they have a factory in San Francisco. Remember that Camino Verde Crunch Bar? This is the first shipment I think you sent to me with the new bars, so that was very exciting. This was basically when we started working together. Once you got the rebranding, and I used to do all these chocolate tastings, and there's that Hispaniola bar making it into the rounds of my chocolate tastings. This is a really crappy picture of you winning a whole bunch of awards at Northwest Chocolate Festival in 2014. I think this was the year of the Marignan milk thing. Boom, boom, boom. First place, third place, boom, boom, killing it. I had other pictures with all of us, but I couldn't find them. Setting up the booth at Northwest Chocolate Festival, which if you're ever in Seattle at that time of year, you should go. You gotta go, because everybody's there and having fun. Oh, you remember this? Yeah, you gave this to me, and then I realized I couldn't take it with me. It was this liqueur from, oh, by the way, the bourbon in that dark milk chocolate, it's from a local distillery.
Yeah, it's from a distillery called Tuttletown Spirits.
And that's what this is too?
Yes. So it's the first whiskey distillery in New York State since Prohibition, and they're almost single-handedly responsible for changing the farm distillery laws in New York State. They do fantastic stuff. The bourbon that we use is called baby bourbon. And it's aged in smaller 5-gallon barrels as opposed to the bigger, whatever size, like the 50-gallon barrels. So it ages a little bit faster and becomes like a smoother bourbon in a shorter period of time. So that's the one that we chose to use. And we developed a really good relationship with the owners and the then head distiller. And he came up with this really great cacao liqueur. So it's not like that, like garbage sweet Godiva chocolate liqueur that you might find. It actually tastes like chocolate. I mean, so it's like this really cool collaborative process to make a very specific, essentially 100% chocolate liquor for them to then distill into this chocolate liqueur.
Yeah, it was really gorgeous. And I was really annoyed when I realized, like, okay, basically I got to pay $50 to get this home. Or I gave it to Adam. And actually when I went up to visit him, I'm like, I want that. It really made the rounds because he was driving back. So he got it. I think this is a fun picture. Do you see Colin and Bryan in the background too? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this was just my a brunch with my precious. I used to call it my Marignon milk back when it was not exclusive. Another tasting set where you made the rounds. Yep. Happy hour pictures. One of the sets I did for 6th course of Fruition. I don't know how much. Oh, that's the glow in the dark one that you can't really. It's not as good of a shot as the other one. This is 2015. This is already 5 years ago. Isn't that crazy? This is the June 2015 stuff at FCIA and all the kind of good stuff that happens around there. And then, yep, hitting your shop. Do you remember when the Canadians, we all came to visit you guys?
Yep.
We did a road trip and we went through New York, and I actually even went into Canada because I was stocking so much chocolate. But this is the first time this shop was still pretty new at that point. It was definitely the first time I saw it. It was, yeah, 2015.
Yeah, it was pretty much brand new at that point.
Yeah. So this is what the Woodstock shop looks like. There's a show. You're building out a new factory too, right? Is that right? You're building out a new space or working on developing a space, or?
Right now, no. We did a fairly large expansion in our existing shop in Shokan 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah. So the other place you moved into more of it. Okay, that's what I.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, right now, I mean, since March, that shop in Woodstock has just been shuttered. So, yeah.
This is a terrible picture, but it is at the International Chocolate Awards, and we were all feeling incredibly celebratory. That was a big night. I remember that. That was a lot of fun. Finally racking up the awards. This is that Belize event. Remember that at the Northwest Chocolate Festival? All these chocolate makers use Maya Mountain Cacao in Belize. That's Emily Stone and Maya when she was working with Maya Mountain Cacao. I'm not sure if it was Uncommon Cacao then, but with Maya Mountain Cacao. And so at the Northwest Chocolate Festival, they all made, it was like Belize 6 ways or 8 ways or however many chocolate makers there were. And then I actually later co-opted the ideas. We'll see in a minute. But there's me getting my goodies. And in San Francisco, then we did a Meet Your Maker thing with all of these chocolate makers who use Belize chocolates. So we did a big fun event there with about a dozen makers. Good Food Awards. Dahlia looking good with the necklace on. That was 2016, back in the day. I love this photo because it's actually everybody who's doing the happy hour. This is Dick Taylor, Ritual, and Fruition. I think I love that shot. Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with the bar. Then we get back to we already saw these. Summer camp, summer is here. We'll have to get together again somehow soon. And then actually I brought you your chocolate to Ecuador when you were working with the Camino Verde. You can see the Camino Verde crunch here. This is Vicente Norrero. He produces the cacao in all of these bars. This is the short version of it. So your bars went down to Ecuador. This one is just a gorgeous special bar that like I still see popping up here and there, even though it's like hyper sold out. And then somebody will bring it out of their stash and I get jealous. Very special partnership with Eclat Chocolat. This is a gorgeous bar. I still have a square or two somewhere.
It's the best chocolate we've ever made, I think.
Did you hear that? Straight from the chocolate maker's mouth. The best chocolate they've ever made.
I actually I didn't even tell Bryan this, but I snagged one from the last stash at the chocolate shop the other day, and I was snacking on it while I was working. It's really good. It's like very nutty and creamy and delicious.
It is, and at an 80%.
I wish we could get those beans again. We actually have been talking to the guys at Marignon to see if Noe will produce, that set of beans again for us. So stay tuned for maybe a future edition of it down the road. But if not, we're going to seek out some other special cacao to keep things coming your way.
Okay, so now here's a trick I can't get out of. I maneuvered things around. Are you seeing like gibberish going on my? I don't know if I can exit. I'm
On the
trying
top
to
here,
get,
it says view options. I think you can,
yeah, I'm not seeing those.
okay, just click escape, maybe? Or
Yeah.
just leave it on there while we wrap up, that's fine.
Right, I know. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah, so I mean, obviously we've tasted through the chocolates. Did you guys? I wanted to. Oh, quick storage tips. Temperature, humidity, and odors are not your chocolate's friend. That's the real deal. So you don't want anything too cold or too hot. Between 60 and 70 is ideal for storage. Low humidity, doesn't have to be dry as a bone. Fridge is not a great place unless you really store it carefully and watch the temperature changes really, you know, like any fluctuations are also really bad. And any stinky odors, don't do it. What else we got? This is bizarre. Yeah, anyways, the windows are disappearing, so I'm really not able to get off of this version of whatever it is. So I think at this point, I think we've gotten through all these beautiful 6 gorgeous craft chocolates from Fruition. And I hope that you guys, does anybody, if you have questions, I can't really navigate right now. So if you have questions, just unmute yourself. Maybe we have a few minutes for some questions. If anybody has any, we've gotten some good ones coming through the chat. And I know we had some really great questions the last one. I do want to give you guys an opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I've got time. I can't see the chat.
I can't either. I'll keep working on it.
I can see the chat. All right, so some of the questions, someone wanted to know at what point you add vanilla and how you decide how you choose to add cocoa butter and how that works. Yeah, if you want to answer those two.
Yeah, so vanilla generally, so our process is, it's multi-step. So roasting, winnowing, pre-refining, refining, and then conching. That entire process from a raw unroasted cocoa bean to a finished chocolate can take, say, 5 or 6 days. And if we're adding vanilla to a batch, it would be in the form of whole vanilla bean that we grind into a powder first. And then that generally goes into the chocolate the day that we're finishing it up. So it doesn't need to be refined all that much, just enough to smooth out like the little fibrous particles of the vanilla bean itself. But the reason for doing that is because vanilla is such an interesting and delicate flavor, we don't want to add it any earlier during the conching process to blow off or evaporate or volatilize any of those flavors. So we try to add it as close to the end of processing as possible. Question about adding cocoa butter. Some beans have naturally more fat in them than others. So typically, like our dark chocolates, we have a few in like the 74+% range. For those, we don't generally add much butter, if any. But for the lower percentage dark chocolates, like that 68% Hispaniola, and definitely the milk chocolates, where there's not naturally enough cocoa butter just from the cocoa beans themselves, we always have to add a little bit of additional butter. So when we're formulating a batch of chocolate, we try to get to between the natural butter that's in the beans and any added butter, if any, get it up to between like 35 and 38% cocoa butter.
The Camino Verde is notorious for being low fat, and also a type of fat that's firmer, I heard, or like the texture is
Yeah.
like it's low fat and the fat is more solid or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So higher melting point fat. Yeah. So it's
Complicated.
it's complicated. And we don't have fancy labs or equipment to determine exactly what the fat content of a particular bean is. So we kind of have to make educated guesses. So we know what the fat content of the beans themselves is, but we don't exactly know how that's going to react to, our processing techniques, our tempering machines. So that's another whole can of worms that we open up every time we start working with a new type of cacao.
Right. Do we have any, what will be the batch number on the New Hudson Bourbon Bar?
Oh, I saw that one. I believe it's going to be batch. Which batch do you have right now?
Oh, I have my samples, so somebody else will have to.
What batch does everybody else have there?
14.
Because you should have the most recent one.
Oh, actually, maybe I do.
14.
Okay, so if you have 14, the next batch is going to be 15. So you have the newest batch right now.
Oh, some people have 13. A couple have said 13.
Okay.
So 13 or 14. That's part of the fun.
13 and 14 were made back to back. So they're those two batches were made within weeks of each other. So even though they're separate batches, they were made at almost exactly the same time. So the next one that we talked about that's been aging since February should be 15.
Cool. Running out of juice. Anybody have any last? People are starting to boogie of course, because we're at about 6:30. But we might have somebody's don't want to co-opt anybody's opportunity. Well, regardless, tomorrow, if you want to do some chocolate shopping, you need to load up before, the Bar Cacao discount goes away. I can guide you through that 2:30, 5:30 East Coast time. And next week, you can get a tour of the Fruition factory, which I think is pretty cool. What do we? And in the chat is the info there. I can't remember if it was 4:30, but I don't remember if it's East Coast or West Coast time. But it's Stay Home with Chocolate Festival, which is going on, and there's just tons of fun events through that. And visit the Bar Cacao Marketplace, and you'll get to have some fun exploring craft chocolate. Hit me up if you need any suggestions. I've worked really hard at working with the best. So that's been the point of doing what I do, is to really make sure that when people, are exploring craft chocolate, that they're getting the good stuff, because I don't know, 90%, maybe higher. I'm not interested in most craft chocolate, if you know what I mean. But I'm obsessed with the good stuff. So I am so thrilled, obviously, to be partnering with Fruition. It's been an awesome working relationship. And I hope you really enjoyed this chocolate tasting that I picked up personally, and thought it was interesting, the progression, and got you familiar with the way that Fruition works and their style and creativity, and obviously tremendous talent. Dahlia already signed off, but she says thanks to everybody and put the code up for me.
Probably dealing with the 3-year-old that's up way past her bedtime. So
my fault.
we have that one. We have a kid who I mean, now that she doesn't have school, her average bedtime is 10:30.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she's a bit of a night owl. Jeff asked this question twice, and he's interested in hearing about how we make such great chocolate when I don't really like to eat so much. I I do like to eat chocolate. I don't eat it recreationally, I guess. I like chocolate and I appreciate it. Maybe it's one of those situations where because it was a hobby and a love, and it ultimately became my job. I look at it more analytically than for enjoyment purposes, for better or worse. But I do love chocolate. I didn't want anybody to think that I don't like chocolate. I love chocolate. I just don't eat a lot of it. But I taste every single batch of chocolate that we make that comes out of the machine. I have to, like, that's part of the job, and I enjoy it. But it's sometimes it's hard to turn off that switch where it's like work versus enjoyment. Which is why, like, sometimes I clutch your pearls, like I'll go and grab a Snickers bar like once a year and actually enjoy it. Like, there's a reason I got into making chocolate. Like, I like candy. Like, I really enjoy this stuff. So, I mean, we set out to try to make really excellent chocolate, and that's what we're trying to do, like, every day.
Yeah, definitely rocking it, obviously. Well, I don't have much of a sweet tooth, which people don't kind of get, but I don't, like, when sugar's number one, I'm not interested. I'll say that, really, for the most part. But yeah, there's kind of some interesting distinctions between what you want to consume, and the assumptions people make about chocolate sometimes, like with the having a sweet tooth, for example.
We should make a Fruition Snickers bar. I have. So the one thing, if you look at our website, you'll see, like, we have a fairly diverse range of products, both chocolate bars and some confectionery stuff, and some pan-coated things. We do, but that's our regular product line, and it changes and evolves a bit. But again, we don't have a functional retail store because of what's happening in the world right now, and we can't let people in to come and taste and browse. But we have tons of small limited release things that you will not find online. You won't find at any of our wholesale partners. Things that you'll only find in our shop. So, whereas a batch of, like, the bourbon bar yields 6,000 bars. There are projects that we do that may yield like 200 little, composed confection candy bars that don't get into distribution. They make no sense financially to actually produce on scale. We just make them for fun and have them in our store. So I don't know where everybody is, but when things open back up and we can have people in our stores, come and visit us. We've always got fun things. And
They do.
Yeah.
Definitely do. And I mean, along those notes, I thought I would, since I've been sipping on chamomile, I thought I would conclude with a brown butter bourbon caramel. This is definitely, I say that this, again, I'm not much of a sweet tooth person, but every now and then Bryan will nail it. And this is like, it's actually even shaped like a pill, although mine's starting to melt. It's pretty hot here. But it's like a bad mood pill. Like, legit. Sometimes when I'm like gone to, like if I get a buyer who's like, really like harried and he's busy and, like all over the place, I'm like, here you go. Just have this. And they're like, oh. I mean, everything in it is amazing. I mean, like, you've made the chocolate, the bourbon is locally sourced, even the butter is from the local dairy. I mean, everything in it is just a gorgeous ingredient, and then they all just kind of blend together. It's awesome. I recommend it if you're looking to up your Fruition stash. This is definitely a worthy confection for sure. But that's
Yeah.
what I'm signing off on. Mm-hmm.
Enjoy.
So thank you all for coming. I think we'll wrap it up there. I think we've, we'll wait for the Snickers bar. I think we'll all be ready for it.
I'll get right to work on it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Bryan. And thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a good time, and hopefully I'll see you next week or tomorrow. And please do also hit up the factory tour next Friday, the Fruition. Thanks everybody. And
Yes, thanks for organizing this. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.